Listen, before we even start, I just want to talk about something that and myself getting injured, and I know other people getting injured. Let's talk about the streets first in DC before we even talk about cars, trucks, street cars, whatever. Let's first talk about the conditions of our roads and our streets in our city. And let's put a microscope on these things. And let's talk about specifically Benning Road and Florida Avenue. It has to be one of the worst streets to travel on in this city. You cannot go a block without hitting a bump on the road, without hitting a pothole, without riding over glass, without something. And it's sad. And it's been that way for I don't know how long. It's been that way for I don't know how long. We have a new council member in Ward 5, and it still has not changed. It's terrible. It's terrible. And damn it, I'm mad because I am hurt. I can barely get up and sit down because I fell off my bike and landed on my back and got hit by a car. And it wasn't the car's driver's fault. I believe they should not have been speeding the way they were. However, this all started because of the conditions of Benning Road. Simple as that. Now, welcome to this week's edition of The People's Voice, DC. I'm excited to bring on board my co-host, my dear brother, my dear friend, brother Chris Otten, former candidate for Ward 1 Council as well. Kind of our city's Green Party man. Definitely a pleasure. It's been an awesome ride these past few weeks, and just starting this podcast with my dear brother, my dear friend. We don't agree on everything, but it's definitely been a journey. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing good. I've been reading my the latest book in the mix, Communist Manifesto.
Took me back to some school
to
time.
be illustrated with by Martin Rowson. So yeah, just checking in on sort of class dynamics in this city, huge disparities. I've seen roads in Ward 3 get paved 5 times as many times as Benning Road, right? Just the disparities, the health disparities, the literacy disparities, the wealth income gap disparities. All of this is playing out right now in front of us.
Yes.
Every day, on our buses, we see it on the streets. We see it in the high rises. We see it in the tented encampments. The disparity is real in this city, and it's a class war. What we're witnessing against the longtime existing residents, native DC folks, um, and working class families, working poor. Anybody making less than $55,000 a year is written off by this political machine in the city. And we saw that with the budget. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, I'm just We just got to keep exposing, highlighting, talking about solutions, finding ways. That's why I joined this show with you, good Reverend, because I know that's a kind of a key thing that you always sort of try to pull out of any given situation is how do we solve the problem. So I thank you.
Yes. Tonight we have my dear friend. I met her actually when I was living in Ward 1. My dear friend Shantae High. She was fighting for Park Morton. Fighting, and when I say fighting, I'm not talking about the average DC commissioner fighting. I'm talking about she was giving it her all. I'm talking about she was ready to put gloves on and go outside and fight for Park Morton. That's what I mean. Like, it was not a game. If you had an issue in your community, if you had an issue in your building, you want Shantae High fighting for you. You can count on her making some noise, and not just making noise, but getting results. So let's welcome to the people's voice, Shantae High.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy.
Hi, Sean.
Hey, thanks for the introduction, Mike. I'm humbled. I'm humbled. Thank you. Hey, my boy Otten.
How are you?
I am well, 10 toes down another day, so I can't complain.
So let's just give. I saw this. It sounded like you had some comments to add to them street conditions. So I wanted to give you a chance to add your comment to that.
I wholeheartedly agree. In 2019, I was hit by a car while riding a scooter in a bike lane due to a distracted driver who actually fled the scene. And the report that I can actually show you is sitting right there. I'm looking at it. This thick, after reading through it, said that, the witnesses had to go get the lady and bring her back. Wow. And just riding day to day, just riding on any given street right here in Ward 1, Ward 5, Ward 8 even, the potholes are atrocious. The sidewalks are even worse. Being in a wheelchair and you can't wheel down the side, because at one point in time I was wondering, why are so many people in wheelchairs in the street? Why aren't they on the sidewalk? But in some instances, the streets are smoother than the sidewalks. And in some instances, the sidewalks are smoother than the streets. So you have bicyclists riding on the sidewalk simply because the potholes that are in these new bike lanes are not being fixed. They're not being kept clean of debris, which can get into your tire and skid you to a halt, and you could, injure yourself that way. I really hate the amount of money that's being pumped into gentrification when these roads could provide jobs. I mean, a plethora of jobs all over this city.
You.
I agree, and I'll tell you, if you frequent downtown as I do, those roads are getting done, and I mean they get done overnight. I'm not exaggerating. Like, I promise you guys, I'm not lying. Like, I do.
Yeah, like down there off of K Street,
Yeah.
K Street, parts of H Street, depending on like the further end over by what's that going towards what is that area over there? I can't think, but H Street goes all the way over. It runs from like what is that? The corner Benner Road. They done messed stuff up with all that
Goodness.
chopping of the streets and stuff up.
It is terrible. Like all from Benning Road from 8th Street. Let's just say from Heckinger Mall all the way through Gallaudet to Union, through Union Market, and it kind of stops and gets a little better starting at North Capitol Street. That's when it started getting a little better.
Right.
But that whole strip is a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Like literally, to avoid that, I literally will go down and take I'll take F Street. And when I come home to Ward 7, I take F Street, and I take F Street all the way to Maryland Avenue, and then I'll ride that. Like I cannot do Benning Road no more. I'll just take F Street, ride it to Maryland Avenue, and then make the right on Benning Road right there. But that's the best I can do. It's terrible.
It is. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And there used to be a program in DC where if you ran into a pothole and it damaged your car, the city would pay for it.
Well, that program, to my knowledge, still does exist and work. I'm not sure everything, but I know that I will say this. About a year ago, I had a friend it was about 2 years ago. I had first moved to Ward 7, and I had a friend near, and she was telling me, "Look what happened to my tires because of this pothole on Benning Road." But I had looked everything up and sent her the information, and so from what I understand, it took a process and it wasn't immediate. But she was compensated.
Yeah, number one, I was going to say a lot of people don't know about that program. I feel like it needs to be better funded because the city refuses to fix the manholes, and I'm saying manholes, not just the covers, but these holes in these streets literally could hold a whole person at most times. You dig what I'm saying? It's ridiculous that when you drive over a pothole, one whole side of your car sinks down and almost scrapes the ground, the undercarriage. It's ridiculous.
I agree. It's terrible.
And another thing, like with the bike lanes, they've taken good chunks of parking spaces in front of people's homes, and they put these bike lanes here. Now, I don't own a bike, but I do know how to ride a bike, so I oftentimes use now those lanes to ride my roller skates in. Mm-hmm. And every time I see, I'm having to slow down because there are big rocks. There's sticks, twigs, debris in there, and some portions of the bike lane does have broken street particles there, and that is dangerous whether you're riding a bicycle, roller skate, skateboard, or a scooter.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I remember I totaled my car when I drove into a pothole. I didn't see it. It was at night, and I was just driving along. And I had a pretty low car at the time, and there was no lights on the street. It was, I want to say, in Capitol Hill of all places. But like, yeah, next thing you know, I was in a pothole that was like, I want to say 1.5 feet deep and like 8 feet wide, like basically the width of the street. and I just was in it. And then it was like, it's like, what the, I got out of the car and half the car is in the pothole, and there was like a tiny cone like next to it that had nothing. And I was like, holy cow. So the car was all making all sorts of noises and stuff. And I brought it into the mechanic, and he said, your suspension is completely shot. You pretty much have totaled your car. And so, I mean, these sort of things add up for people making less than $55,000 a year. When you get that, that message from your mechanic, your car is totaled. That's huge.
It really is.
So, so between the dust and debris and the lack of sort of, putting plates over things and cleaning up the site, and, after they leave, while they're still working on whatever, like, the city just tends to, it's, I don't know, these contracts, they're supposed to include it all, but there's just no accountability. Right. And so that goes from the streets to the housing, like all this promise of affordable housing. Oh, give us this public land, we're going to build all this affordable housing. You think there's any accounting of that? They can't even do our streets right.
Right.
So there's just no accountability. It's just, it's all just spin, and we got to pay for it.
Yeah, that's the thing that bothers me is the taxpayers their taxes are constantly going up, and they're paying huge, vast sums of money into taxes that, at one point you would see at the end of the year when you file your taxes, you would get it back. Now people are getting less than half of what they were getting, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So, you would expect to see, as, a taxpayer, where is this money going? We're not seeing any real infrastructure work. The free DC Wi-Fi was up for a while, but then so many people were on it, it lagged. So it's like, where is money going besides y'all pockets and greasing these developers' hands and pockets? What else is it being, added to? Because the housing that is being built looks like Legos at this point. It's just, you look and it's like, oh, they're getting ready to build something there. And you don't go there for 6 months and you come back, the building is up and people are lacing up, getting ready to move in. And it's like, holy shiitakes, man, seriously?
And this is why I wanted you on the show.
Yep.
No, I mean, and thank you, Chris, for ushering up this subject of housing, which I won't get to anyway. But it's definitely real, and I mean, I wanted you particularly to talk about your experiences. First, you can introduce yourself and let everyone know what position you held and the role you play at Park Morton. But just let everyone kind of insight on what you had to endure on from a point of there's a plan going forth that is everyone is unanimously supporting, and then a judge saying, nope, let's step it back, and then we gotta let's go from here and start all over again. And like, you went through a lot. You went through a lot, and I'm still kind of learning from the steps you took, and trying to figure out how we can help my dearly beloved Potomac Gardeners. But just welcome. Thank you for joining us and share.
Thank you. My name is Shantae High, affectionately and lovingly known to my community and friends as Sean, a powerhouse, loudmouth advocate that's for the people and about the people in justice and fairness. I am the president of the council at Park Morton. duly elected twice by my residents. And I fight for, housing justices, equality for Black and brown families, also my Asian families, because I have Asian in my family. I fight for small businesses and the unhoused, and I mean veterans and seniors and disability. Man, you name it, I'm in the fight for it, like the kung fu fighter. You hear me? I'm doing some and I'm chopping people in the throat every chance I get. So yeah, I feel like there should be more equality and reparations paid to Black communities, especially harmed by redlining and racism that's built into the fabric of the laws that's supposed to serve the people. Um, and yeah, that's, oh, and I'm a mom. I'm an awesome mom. My girls, they made me awesome. So I couldn't be awesome without them.
What would you say was the high point of your moment at Park Morton, and what was your lowest point at Park Morton?
My highest point and my lowest point. Okay, I'm gonna start with my lowest point. My lowest point was when Housing Authority and the developers literally, and our Ward 1 council member, Brianne Nadeau, literally went behind the residents' backs, went behind my back, and stole the opportunity for us to have our Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, or TOPA, rights. That was my lowest point. Aside that, in conjunction with how the former leadership was attacking me on like every level. They were trying to unhouse me and my children based off the fact that I was trying to hold their feet to the fire to make them do right by the people. My highest point was being able to bring the community together, because we were so fractured. We were so fractured that we weren't really communicating with each other. One would talk to another in order to deliver a message to another. And after becoming resident council president, I was able to, like my rest in peace Reagan, when he told Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. That was like me at that moment. I was tearing down the walls between the residents who were against each other and didn't know why they were against each other. There was a lot of COINTELPRO going on at Park Morton, and seeds of deceit and deception and malice being sown by Housing Authority, by TCB, that stands for the Community Builders, and by HOU, Housing Opportunities Unlimited, and by Latoya Thomas, who owns Brick and Story. So they used me to bring the residents to the table, and then they exile me once they had what they wanted. And I wouldn't shut up about that, so that upset them as well.
So wait a minute, you did say something that I can't bend to as much as I used to. You did say something that kind of caught my attention. You said Brianne. You mentioned in that council member Brianne Nadeau. Now, I know council member Brianne Nadeau a little, but I do know also that she kind of champions like this housing, and she kind of champions
She wants you to think that.
You said what?
Okay. I said my mic was on. I got a hot mic, my bad. I was sitting there, I was like, she wants you to think that she's champion house. Oh, she's champion housing, all right, for the rich people. 80% AMI is not affordable to a disabled person who is living on 16, 17K a year. That's not affordable. It's not, I'm going to just use the word nice. It's not nice to kick Black families out of their communities and scatter them all over the city and make promises to them that you're going to help them return to their home, when in all actuality, you had no plans on doing that. You know, so behind closed doors, she's taking away green space. She's taking away really deeply affordable housing for people that can truly afford it. And she spins everything to make it seem like, oh no, everybody's lying against me. I'm not doing that. But I have proof. I did a FOIA on this woman, a Freedom of Information Act on Brianne Nadeau, and her emails show me the deception. It shows me she's a snake in the grass. And it's like, I gotta relate to my man DMX when he said, the rat, the snake, the cat, the dog, how you gonna live if you living in the fog? And basically in that, you got to take from the fact that you got to cut down that grass in order to see the snakes. And Brianne is the snake. And every time I call her out, she goes and spins it somewhere else where, oh, Miss High is lying on me. She is not telling the truth. Let me just explain to you this, that, and the other. If she were actually doing her job, this recall wouldn't be in effect. And she wouldn't be way out in Chevy Chase, Maryland, getting money out of private citizens and developers or whoever is funding her don't sign the petition campaign. And then she's trying to spin it and put it on Republicans.
You just said a lot right
there. Brianne, I'm telling you, she is, the best thing I can say is she walking in dirty sandals. And as a pastor, you should know what that means.
I know what it means.
Yeah, she walking in dirty sandals. So, you know, all I do is sit back and watch God work. Because, you know, like I know, the Bible says, do not my prophets no harm. And she has done a lot of God's children, a lot of God's prophets. She's done them dirty. And she may not pay for it right this second, but at some point in time, God is going to make her pay, because he says, vengeance is mine. So it is not my place to take vengeance when God says it is his.
So Chris, I'm gonna bring you in, because you know, both of you are Ward 1 residents. You know, I moved to Ward 1 kind of in transition here, but for the most part, I'm Ward 6. You know, and so, you know, the Brianne Nadeau that was on the surface was always, like I was telling Miss High, is always champion housing and always fighting the mayor on these encampments, and we cannot push the unhoused away. And, you know, so this is news, you know. As a Ward 1 resident, what has been your experience?
Well, I'd say that the experience has been a masterclass in spin, obfuscation, basically a drastic sort of retelling of real people's real experiences and stories. And, it's easy to do that with language, right? So the words affordable housing, we've built all this affordable housing. Hi, I'm Brianne Nadeau. I built all this affordable housing, and we're fighting for affordable housing here. We're fighting for affordable housing there. And that means housing for people making more than $55,000 a year. That's what affordable housing means to Brianne Nadeau. So when you hear that, it becomes kind of a frightening sort of scenario, because we all hear the term affordable and we legitimately take that at face value and we're like, yay, affordable housing. And then the reality is it's for people like making like 40 to 50 bucks an hour. The living wage in DC, I mean, I'm seeing like there's going to be a big celebration next week for the living wage, $17.50 an hour. $17.50 an hour times 8 hours a day times 5 days a week times 50 weeks a year is $35,000 a year. That's what the living wage in the minimum wage in DC gets you. So if you're making the minimum wage in DC, you cannot afford DC's affordable housing. If you make more than the living wage in DC or the minimum wage in DC, you cannot afford the affordable housing. The affordable housing is for people. Most of the affordable housing is for people making $85,000 a year or up. The low end, which they're barely building the units, are for people making like $55,000 a year. The big rub on all this stuff is that affordability in the district as a policy is fundamentally broken because it's based on area median income. The area median income includes DC, Montgomery County, Fairfax County. Two of the wealthiest counties, right up against one of the poorest cities, one of the poorest counties in the nation, right? And so you skew everything up to this AMI, which is why you have such astronomical like amounts, that we're talking about what you could qualify, who can qualify for DC's affordable housing, somebody making $85,000 a year, because the AMI is closer to, 100,000 plus a year for a single person. That's the AMI in this area. And so also it's going up every year. It's a hockey stick curve. So the AMI has gone from 100,000 a year for a single person. That's where it's at about right now. 5 years ago, it was at like 85,000. So, 3 years before that, it was like 65,000. So you're talking about already just starting at such high numbers. And because wealth begets wealth and displacement begets displacement, the number is just skyrocketing right now. So the AMI is like on a hockey stick curve. It's been like this, and now it's like this. And as the AMI goes up, affordability decreases because the pool of people who qualify for the affordable housing gets bigger and bigger. Wealthier and wealthier people now qualify for the affordable housing because the AMI is going up. And it's a built-in broken policy brought to DC by smart growthers, urbanists, about 15 years ago under Mayor Fenty. And particularly the Coalition for Smart Growth is who gave us this policy. And when you set affordability at such high numbers, the existing affordable housing, the people who've been living here forever in their affordable housing at $800 or less a month, the landlords of those properties are going to be looking across the street and going, oh, wait, they just built this huge condo over here and their most affordable unit is $1,500 a month. Why am I charging $800 a month here? And they'll figure out any kind of way to get people out, whether that's eviction court, whether that's harassment, whether that's, mold or just neglect. And in very real cases in DC, we've seen it, burning folks out of their apartments. Burning folks out of their apartments. It happened in Adams Morgan. I mean, this is how vicious this real estate machine, turning community into commodity, turning our networks, our people networks, into profit networks. It's horrendous. And DC is really sort of on the front line of this. When you look around the nation, they've taken the cue from DC. New York, taken the cue from DC. Chicago, taking the cue from DC. If you could do this in DC, Chocolate City, and get away with it by black and brown leaders, essentially, who are I say leaders loosely, officials who are pushing these policies and using the spin, the language to cover up the reality, to make themselves sound good. We're building all this affordable housing, it's, to me at this point, when I see things like Kenya McDuffie's bill on reparations, again, great idea. About time, 400 years late, but it's happening. Good. We're having a conversation, but this study, the bill is about a study. Like, what else do we need to study, folks? Like, isn't it all very apparent at this point? To me, it's sort of like, it's the slow play that's so frustrating. It's the excuses not to act for real people in real dire situations. Pointing back to Sean, I mean, who can forget the excuse? Folks at Park Morton wanted to stay in Ward 1 near their networks that they've had for decades, right? Next to their doctors, next to their pharmacists, next to their neighbors, their cousins. Instead, they were dispersed to the wind. But before dispersing them, Brianne and the Housing Authority brought a proposition by the Park Morton neighbors, right? And basically, said, look, you all just gave away this public property at where the Whole Foods is. It's called the Wren. And there's hundreds of new units in there. And there's affordable units in there. Why don't we all move there, which was literally like 4 blocks away. Am I right, Sean?
Yep, that is correct.
And basically, Brianne came back with this excuse. Oh, you guys don't make enough money to move to the Wren. The Wren being public land, public assets, public money, funding the developer to build all this awesome affordable housing that somehow Sean and her colleagues and her neighbors and her cousins and friends and people, the real people of Park Morton, couldn't afford. To me, is so outrageous, right? Because now all of the Park Morton folks, just like Sursum Corda, just like Arthur Keepers Carrollsburg, just like Lincoln Manor. I mean, you can just pick a public housing complex or pick a co-op that's been situated in DC for a long time that has been dispersed. Where do those folks actually come back? When do they come back? In what auspices are they helped while they're away? This is part of reparations as far as I'm concerned. And, we don't need a bill to study it. We can act on reparations right now by helping the folks who deserve to be helped now, not later, not, sometime in the future, like actually right now. And that's where I'm at with the folks that reach out to me and why I help, what I do with service to the folks.
Yes. Chris has been very vital and instrumental in helping me to protect as much as Park Morton for as long as I could protect Park Morton. He has even facilitated, and let me tell you how dirty Let me tell you how dirty this redevelopment team, and Chris can attest to this. Now watch this. In the beginning, when Bruce Monroe Park was selected as our quote unquote build first site, literally the whole, I call them the conglomerate, because it's just like a bunch of entities with acronyms slapped together, and they're all just conspiring to get poor people out of their neighborhood. So I call them the conglomerate. So the conglomerate got together, starting with Brienne and Kent Bates, and made a dirty deal behind closed doors to get Bruce Monroe Park. Once that was on the table and they started citing that they was going to build, affordable housing there, blah, 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 and a senior building and woo, 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 there was animosity that happened between the Friends of Bruce Monroe and Park Morton. And we had no instrumentation in any of the, Park Morton had no instrumentation in fighting with the Friends of Bruce Monroe. Chris came in and facilitated a meeting. Well, first it started with William Jordan, because William Jordan introduced me to Dave Bobeck, who was leading the lawsuit for Bruce Monroe Park. And then after I met with Dave, Dave went back and told everybody else, hey, she's not as bad as you think she is. They up there, don't believe the hype, pretty much, he was telling them. So then
before you go on, because I want to include this in your response too. This comes from the Columbia Heights Insider.com. So big shout out to the Columbia Heights Insider.com. Okay. But you said, I would love to have my council members' full support and acknowledgement on the PMEP, Park Morton Equity Plan. However, I'd be remiss to acknowledge that she recently said in a letter to the press that she will support a modified plan, which is saying without saying, we're moving forward with the PMEP as far as building on the footprint of Park Morton, although she really didn't want to. Her hope was for Bruce Monroe to pan out. It didn't, and this is where we are. The protesters hope to see more commitment from local government officials to prevent the displacement of Park Morton's residents. And you said, I want my council member to remember that she is a community leader who made a promise to her constituents to provide safe, valuable, truly, deeply affordable housing as the chairwoman of the Housing Committee. With all due respect, we need her to stand up for us now more than ever. We're appreciative of the fight that has been done thus far. However, there are more rounds in the ring to be had, and we need her backing us wholeheartedly.
Yes, sir.
And do you feel like he ever came to the point of backing you wholeheartedly?
I doubt that very seriously, because she has not backed us the way she should have in the beginning. It's always been about Brienne Nadeau's agenda. And she has said time and time again that Bruce Monroe is her quote unquote legacy, and she will not allow anyone to stand in the way of her obtaining her quote unquote legacy. And she's done everything possible to make it happen. So now, just earlier this year, the ANC commissioners have sold Bruce Monroe Park. The redevelopment is imminent now at Bruce Monroe Park because of Brienne Nadeau's quote unquote legacy. That part.
So where do you still talk to some of the residents? Like where are the residents that were at
I'm in communication with a a good handful of my residents. Some of them I'm not, because when Tyrone Garrett and Brenda Donald were in the DCHA executive director's position, they actually were blocking they were blocking my communication with my residents who had already moved from Park Morton. They said, and I'm quoting verbatim, that I have to send my information to them. They will get it to the residents. And that's not how things were working. They literally was filtering out what I wanted to do.
Wow.
So yeah, Brienne and the conglomerate, they dirty work. They are dirty work. All of them walking in dirty sandals, and they greasing each other's palms. It's ridiculous.
So, first, are you a Democrat?
I am a libertarian. I was a Democrat when I moved to the District of Columbia. I stayed a Democrat for quite some time, and then I switched to an independent. And I was an independent for like maybe 10, 15 years. And then in 2018, I switched to being a libertarian because I did more reading on them, and I support their values, that what they are, despite the fact that there aren't very many Black libertarians. So I tend to set a precedence.
No, I was just asking to basically come to the conclusion. I just imagine you're probably supporting the recall.
I am supporting the recall. I support it because Brienne deserves to be recalled for many, many different reasons. One, starting with that Main Street program. She could have advocated for more small businesses who do not have storefronts to be able to have, funding from the Main Street program.
Well, don't you think the answer would be to elect a different leader? I'll just say this: I'm a Democrat.
I do.
I am a Democrat, and I don't see necessarily the benefit of a recall that is funded by not so many Black people. But I don't know. I just
okay. So I support it, like I said, for many different reasons. There have been small businesses in Ward 1 who have gotten robbed several times under Brienne Nadeau's watch, and she didn't do anything to assist them or point them in the direction of where they could get more funding or grants that could give them that, where they could invest in better security technology, cameras, alarm systems, or what have you. There's a lot that she could have did as the Ward 1 council person, and she did not.
But like I said, these issues are citywide. Like I just think that a lot of these issues are citywide.
Yeah, it is. But I can only address the council member that serves me. Personally, I would get on Trayon right now in the foolishness he be doing, but we're gonna stay focused. But I agree with you. We need to elect better representation. We need to hold our representation accountable. Mind you, I can hold myself accountable knowing that I voted for Brienne one time, and that's when she first ran against Jim Graham. I voted for her not knowing what I was doing. If I had known that she was
Jim Graham.
Yes, she ran against Jim Grant. Jim was doing Park Morton. Rest in peace, Jim. He was doing Park Morton dirty at the time, so I felt like, okay, if you're gonna do that, and our resident council president at that time, the late great Miss Marie A. Whitfield, was also our ANC commissioner, and Jim had did some sneaky stuff by changing the borders so that Miss Whitfield could not represent Park Morton the way she had in the past, and that really got under my skin. So I was like, okay, you gone, dude, you gone. So I voted for Brienne.
In Ward 1 that you would support to be council?
I in this last election, I wholeheartedly voted for Mr. Otten, and I took a picture of the shaded in dot right there and let people and put it up on my social media that I have voted for Mr. Chris Otten. Yes, I did. And I hope the 20% that voted for him go back and talk about the fact that we voted for him because of these reasons. There was 20% of people that just wasn't in agreement with what Brienne was doing. So that shows you people are changing. They're seeing the real her at this point. And you know, I can't knock the recall. Somebody jumped out there and did. I would have did if I didn't have so much to do already. Ooh. Lord, no. I told you I need 40 clones, but the world can't handle
40 So here's the thing with the recall. So, you know, there's signs being put up that Brienne, I think obviously Brienne's team has pulled together. She had met with a bunch of developers out in Chevy Chase when it looked like the recall was getting serious. And so she raised a bunch of money to put up these signs. And basically the signs say, you know, say no to the recall because it's a Republican funded sort of scenario, right? And the thing about that is, you know, again, about the spin and this sort of thing, conflation. In some ways, she's right. You know, there is a push by certain factions in the city that, you know, that want to recall her and take a very punitive approach to crime, you know, throw the folks in jail, lock away the, you know, throw away the key sort of perspective. But, you know, we all know that crime isn't just something that pops up suddenly and why it's a big deal. Like now it's not a new thing. But crime is absolutely related and relevant and directly associated with our social condition. I mean, people are not going into CVS to steal a bunch of toilet paper and risk, you know, years in jail for, you know what I'm saying? Like there's just a disconnect there. It's like that the struggle is real to try to just hustle and make it here in DC with the disparity and the costs and all of that. And there's not a lot of hope for the young folks. I mean, imagine they went through COVID, a period of time when a lot of folks didn't even go to school, didn't see their peers, and just sort of a serious societal disconnect, like as a young person, I can imagine, right? And so instead of exploring that, you have a faction of the city, typically whiter, wealthier homeowners who are willing to put money down to just say, throw folks in jail. And that's who Brienne is pointing at when she says that's what this recall is about. And in some ways, she's right. But there's an entire other faction of people in Ward 1. Clearly, I barely ran a campaign and I got 20%. I had no posters. I literally handed out 200 black and white copy flyers on the line at one precinct. So there's obviously discontent enough that 20% of the voter electorate said, we don't want her. And that there's a faction of that is, yeah, kind of this rightish, Republicanish leaning type. There's a big faction of it too that sees through the spin, progressives who know Sean, who know others, who have seen that for every public asset we give away, whether it's 965 Florida Ave, Bruce Monroe, Park Morton, 1617 U Street. I mean, the list can go on and on. The amount of public assets that we give away for developers to produce affordable housing, we went through that earlier. Every dollar left on the table, or in the case of McMillan Park, every dollar we actually gave the developers to take the land from us, which is about $100 million. Every dollar left on the table in these public land giveaways is a dollar we don't have to make sure a child doesn't go hungry at night. Doesn't go to these programs that help folks, that give folks hope, that help folks get through these times, these tough times, so they don't have to turn to antisocial behavior. So they have to feel like they're in a corner and have to do something just to make ends meet. And so that's very real to me. And so Brianne Naidoo's policies around privatization of our public assets to become the queen maker and give away our land to her favorite developers for who knows what promises, whether now or in the future, as if this land is hers to give away. It's not our collective land. That sort of policy people also see as directly harmful, directly related to crime.
Yes.
And and also equally important, probably far more important, as far as a recall, as a question around recall, because we're going to have to deal with another 4 years of that. Interestingly enough, I haven't really participated much with the recall efforts, and it's in part because, there is a very real association with these sort of right-wing types that are involved in there, and you can be, it can be really sort of stigmatizing to be associated. And she's playing on that. Brianne is playing on that with these signs. But without a doubt, there are so many policies and behaviors from this politician, who interned, by the way, at AIPAC, right? The American Israeli Political Action Committee. She was either, this is all on her resume, interned with the Anti-Defamation League. You want to talk about racist sort of groups, who hate a whole group of people just by where they are on this planet, in Palestine. It's also a big reason why we see there's a lot of commotion right now about the ceasefire bill that is gaining momentum in the council, where a lot of folks want to pass a ceasefire bill. And she is adamantly opposed to that. And there's reasons for it. And there's reasons why she gets money from certain groups of people. And I'm putting this all out there, it's backed up by certain things, there's evidence of this. I don't have it at my fingertips, but suffice to say, she has learned a lot about spin, propaganda, and how to control the narrative around these issues, so much so that she wins progressive support because it sounds like she's doing good things. And in some ways, she's done a lot of good things for women, for mothers, about healthcare. There's a lot of good stuff that comes out of that office, but the harm, when you contrast it with the harm to rooted Ward 1 DC people, by the way, Ward 1, some of the highest Black displacement over the last 10 years.
Yep.
Right? I mean, 25% of Ward 1 Black population gone over the last 10 years. She's been around for 8 of those 10 years.
Yep.
So to ignore that and yet do these other progressive things, it is just a dissonance and a contrast that just can't stand really very well. And I understand why there's a recall campaign for those purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Agreed. So I just want to add that in the beginning of this whole redevelopment process, Greater Washington was working with me. And then the minute I changed course on them, because, and people bring up the fact that in 2015, I gave a testimony at the council hearing and I read a poem and I owned every bit of that. I didn't deny it because it's in the archives. But the reason I changed course is because when I got elected as resident council president in 2017, I was made privy to documents that I was not made privy to as a regular resident. And because I was able to see these documents and read through them and able to discern on my own that this was not benefiting us, it was benefiting, the developer and anybody else who had money into it, including Bua Bamente of Dante's Partners, who actively last year in July, a year ago this month, called me and all but cussed me out about, do you have money invested in this? I said, me and my children's lives are invested in this, and that's better than money. So I don't know where he was coming from with that, but I told him straight, we are not going to have this conversation if you continue to yell at me. And he got, and Miss High said, goodbye, click up, and hung right up on Bua. I ain't playing that. Because, look, I got a little Nigerian in me, too. And if you want to meet me in the streets, I'll meet you. I ain't got no problem with it. So,
Good Rev, your mic's muted.
Yeah, you muted, Mike.
I said we're going to keep this a family show, amen.
We are. We're going to keep it a family show, but I just want to let Bua know that that's not right to treat people that way. And hindsight, if you didn't know, I own my own business, High Alert Emergency Preparedness. You can Google it. Please go to HAERprep.com to view my website. And I actually gave Bua a business proposal. It was actually one he couldn't refuse. It benefited both of us. You know what I'm saying? And in short, you're building all these new buildings because he had told me his house got flooded. I said, oh, it sounds like you need me. He didn't want to acknowledge that, but emergency preparedness, over $1 billion. The government has, invested over $1 billion in emergency preparedness. And as a well certified, and when I tell you well certified, I got to go to my website now and add the 3 more new certificates I just received to my website. I am the most. Look, somebody called Genesis World Book of Records.
Yeah, we got to talk about. We didn't get a chance to talk about the emergency preparedness portion. We only talked about housing today, so we got to get you back on to talk about that portion. You just
all of it goes together, though.
The whole doula experience. We got to talk about all of it. So
all of that ties together because a lot of our residents were displaced. They used the flooding of Park Morton to help displace us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we definitely enjoyed you. and I can't wait to hear what listeners thought, and I'm sure they all enjoyed you. It was definitely a pleasure. We definitely got to have you back sometime. Did you have any last words you wanted to share?
Just thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm always a supporter of yours and Chris's. It has been an honor, a privilege, and I cannot thank you all enough for being able to put people's voices out there to let the truth be heard.
I believe in that. Chris, did you have any last words you wanted to say before we leave?
Just blessings be for everybody listening. I hope it was productive and informative. Obviously, we are connected through all of these networks now, and if you heard something tonight that you want answers to or questions about, don't hesitate to hit up risingvoicesdc@gmail.com. And then we can weigh in together offline as well.
That's right. Before I leave, I just I wanted to encourage the public to really in and know what is going on. Something bothered me last night. I was talking to a friend, and I'm going to say this very quickly. We're definitely running over our time, but I was talking to a friend, a younger friend who was in their 20s, and they said, we will not participate. Our generation just won't participate in elections. Nothing is going to change anything. Just had a very negative attitude, and you hear it all the time, but it just really took me on how sincere and how serious this person was. Like the faith was completely lost. And as a party, as a member of the Democratic Party, a lot of us are getting to a place where faith is completely lost. It's months before the presidential election, and we aren't even sure about who's representing us. As far as I'm concerned, it's going to be Biden, and I'm going to support him 100%. But we shouldn't be questioning this right now. It's out of hand. So I need everyone that's listening to look internally at what you want your community to look like, what you want your community to be, and not just what your community can look like and be for you, but who do you want to be for your community? And I think when we answer them questions, it can change a lot of things. So I just wanted to leave you with those two questions. Really quickly, there's also it's been extremely hot all week long. I feel like all this whole summer long, it's been a heat advisory. So I just want everyone to make sure that you are staying safe. Practice heat safety wherever you are. Heat-related injuries are preventable. Protect yourself and others from the impacts of heat waves. Stay hydrated. Take breaks when you're at work. Be in the shade if you're outdoors. When you're indoors, check on the elderly, check on the sick, check on those without AC. And let me add, check on those without central AC. I am from Potomac Gardens. The AC units in the window will blow out hot air when it's hot. Okay, it's not blowing out cold air; it's blowing out hot air.
Hot air. Yeah.
Okay, well, if you're in a vehicle, never leave kids or pets unattended. It shouldn't be said, but it's done every day.
Yes.
Outdoors, please limit strenuous outdoor activities. Find shade and stay hydrated. This is the people's voice. I am Pastor Mike. And until next time, goodbye.